Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Recruiting Podcast. I am Billy Embody. With me is Shea, Dixon. Thanks for joining us on this edition. Look, it was a tough loss in Tiger Stadium on Saturday with Tennessee taking it to LSU. But as always, a lot of recruiting intel to go over, a lot of storylines that are continuing to develop over the course of this season, and good timing for us to go over the very first official visitor of the football season, Tausili Akana out of Utah. Shea, look, we'll get to that in a second. We've talked about this on the podcast when we looked at the Florida State game. Recruits don't live and die like fans do about single games. It was a tough showing for LSU just from the get-go. 11 a.m. wasn't exactly what LSU had in mind by any means, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a vision to sell. There are opportunities for these guys that they're recruiting to step in and contribute and change the direction of how this is going. So I would just say to anyone out there, and I'm sure you guys have covered it, Maddie B, on the Reaction podcast and the mailbag, which I just got done listening to the mailbag. This isn't how the fans view it. The recruits are going to be fine for the most part.
Yes, I always use people get tired of me hearing me say it, but I always use the recruits play for high school teams that lose all the time. Like, they get it. It's not the end of the world. And we're going to talk about, as you said, a handful of these guys that came in. For me, this is a good segue because I think it drives home what this staff has done a good job of, Billy, which is selling all these kids, not on, look, Brian Kelly's here. Look, the new staff's here. We're going to save the day. They're going to win a lot of games this year. Like, they got up to 21, 22 commits before the season started, and they haven't lost anybody since then. So they had sold them on this year is the ground floor of the foundation. We're going to continue to build it. We want you to be a part of it. You will be an integral part of that coming in year two as a true freshman. And Jaylen Brown, who everyone on the board and listening to the podcast knows, he's one of the top receivers in the country, committed to LSU out of Miami, a top 100 player. And Chad Simmons caught up with him. He was at the game. It was his first time going to Tiger Stadium. He went to the FSU-LSU game in the Superdome. But he said for him, look, I got to hang out with my family, friends, other commits in Tiger Stadium, got to see my first game there. Was it, and he quoted, look, did it turn out as planned? No, it was still a good game because I had a good time with the environment. But he said this, he said, quote, what makes me believe in Coach Kelly is that everywhere he's been winning. And he hasn't been winning with talent like he can get at LSU. Me and my dad always said he's been winning with less. So now that he gets the talent behind his coaching philosophy, it could be dangerous. That's what they're selling these guys on is, look, we've won as Kelly. I've won a long time. Been in this 30-something years as the head coach. My win percentage is up there with the best of them. Nick, Dabo, you name them. Guys are like Nick, especially who've been around that long. Mac Brown, he knows what he's doing. And that's what I've told people on the LSU side, Billy. We talked about that with me and Matthew on the podcast. Like, you don't need to freak out. The future of the program is fine. They hired a guy. Yeah, paid him a lot of money. But because he's got a track record of winning at every level, whether it was D2, Group of Five, Power Five, Notre Dame independently, now at LSU with these resources and guys like Jaylen Brown, Billy, 4 stars who are difference makers who say, hey, look, I want to buy in. I want to be part of that. I think they're certainly recruiting to the level of giving Brian Kelly talent that he has not had at his disposal, certainly at a lot of skill positions during his time at Notre Dame. So that was good news to hear Jaylen Brown leave and say, hey, look, I'm still locked in. I'm good.
And to kind of build off of that, when Brian Kelly took over for Charlie Weiss, they recruited very well at Notre Dame. I would say that was probably the heyday of, let's just say, modern Notre Dame recruiting with the guys that they were able to get into that program. That was at least when I really started getting into watching recruiting when I was in high school and even late middle school, things like that. This program that Brian Kelly took over at LSU is not in the same boat. And so it's going to take a process to get to that floor, because I think with Brian Kelly at the helm, the floor of LSU is year by year going to be pretty safe, pretty solid, because he knows what he's doing, because he's had this long track record of winning. I caught up with Jaylen Brown's dad. First time we had kind of caught up in 2 weeks, kind of flew by, but chatted with him this morning. And he said, look, at the end of the day, Jaylen and I love LSU. The family loves LSU, and that's exactly what he told Chad Simmons. And they're not taking any other visits as of now. The rest of this month, they'll be back most likely for LSU, Alabama. That's a good sign. That's what you want to see, and they're churning ahead towards that early signing period date. So you always want to cross all your T's and dot all your I's with these recruits, but all of these guys are doing the right things for the most part in terms of the commits. We haven't seen too many really red flags in terms of, really starting to see a trend another way with some of these guys. So you like to see that from Jaylen Brown, but let's get to Akana here. Top 100 prospect on the On3 consensus. Texas holds the On3 recruiting prediction machine lead. We'll talk about that, and we talked about last week. Makes a lot of sense with where things stand right now. From a family standpoint, he's originally from Hawaii. His family flew in from Hawaii for this one. He's got family in Utah that he's staying with as he plays stateside. He's a 6'3", 200-pound-ish edge rusher, maybe stand-up outside linebacker type of player. We talked about last week where he would kind of fit in this class if he made it in. But let's look at the visit. LSU was able to spend a lot of time with him after the Tennessee game. And, that's hard to do, with a game day a lot of the times. But also, he was the only official visitor in town.
No doubt about the fact that he really got a lot of time because he was the only visitor. And with playing at 11 a.m., they had the rest of the, after about 5 o'clock, you get to go eat dinner with him and his family as a staff. You see him on Sunday before they leave. I know that he was a part of a lot of kind of film study stuff and meeting one-on-one with Coach Kelly and doing all the things that's sort of the red carpet treatment of, hey, we really want you. Brian Polian has led the way here. Jamar Cain's involved. And the message to Akana has been clear. I mean, I've talked to a number of people who said he would be a take for us. And even though we do have a number of D linemen, edge guys committed, he's a guy we really like. He's a consensus top 100 guy nationally, Billy. I look at the visit and think, you've got a kid from Hawaii that moved to Utah, lives with his aunt and uncle, and plays his high school ball there. Number one player in Utah. He's already made some other official visits. He shows up at LSU. He's got A&M still to come in November. So you're really, after getting him to campus in June, you just wanted to be part of that official visit group and then see where it went from there. He's a Hawaii native. I think a good thing was, and probably paramount towards ever hoping to get a commitment from him, was that his parents flew in from Hawaii. He came from Utah, so they spent the weekend with him. And I know that LSU kind of rolled out the red carpet, did their whole sales pitch, kind of gave them a good feel for how he would be used in the defense. And now we'll see how the A&M visit goes. And then ultimately he'll try to kind of sit down and talk things over. And he doesn't do many interviews, if any at all. So you won't hear exactly from him, but folks around his camp have talked to the media. And I think that it'll be positive reviews. But I think, Billy, at the end of the day, they're going to love all the visits. The big hurdle for me is that his sister goes to Texas and plays volleyball. She's a sophomore there. So Texas already got an official visit. They're in it. Does it make it easier for a family coming from Hawaii to go to Austin to see both their kids play? Like, of course it does. So I think that's something to watch here, but I don't think that rules out the rest of the teams.
Yeah, and one thing I picked up from some of the guys cover Texas, just in our industry and talking with them, chatting with them, even back in August and kind of getting closer to that Akana official visit to Texas was, there was a lot of confidence, and there was a lot of confidence that a commitment could happen on that, official visit that he took to Texas. It ended up not. I think he's somebody that is certainly enjoying himself in the recruiting process right now and knows that with his options on the table, he could probably take a little bit more time, take these visits, and then make the call to whatever program he ends up going to. I think right now I lean towards Texas as well. But let's talk about a player that I think is really intriguing in terms of his recruitment right now, especially, and we flip to the next recruiting cycle, Sterling Dixon, a 4-star defensive end out of Mobile, Alabama. I think the last guy out of Mobile that I remember LSU getting, Desmond Little, and then there was Neil Farrell came out of Mobile.
Farrell, yep, came out of Mobile.
So that area.
So they've gotten some D linemen, edge rush D line guy.
Yep. We can't forget. Oh gosh, of course I say we can't forget, and then we forget Neil Farrell, same class. Spain Park High School. Didn't end up finishing at LSU. I forget his name. He was another guy that they won a couple.
Justin Thomas.
Thank you. So Bama's been, decent in terms of, LSU winning some battles there. Sterling Dixon has been to LSU, I believe, 4 times at least since the month of June started. And that's not counting some visits in the spring. I believe he took 2. He's taken 2 game visits already. He's been to Alabama. He's been to Auburn. He's now set a commitment date for December 1st. And Sam Spiegelman, our national recruiting analyst, put a pick in for LSU to win this battle. Auburn had some picks in before that. This is a recruitment that I think we can agree, no matter where it goes on December 1st, it's not going to be over. We've confirmed that all 3 schools really want him. 6'3", 210-pounder who ranks in the on 300 and as a, consensus, top 250 overall prospect in the country. This is going to be an interesting one because he really hasn't tipped his hand. The only thing he's really showed is he's been to LSU 4 times since June, which I think says a lot.
And twice for games this season. So that speaks volumes as well. That's more than any other. He saw Bama for their opener, but he's been to 2 LSU games now, New Mexico and now Tennessee. I would think if he were picking right now, I think it's LSU. I'd feel confident in that. Now, you've got nearly 2 months until he's announcing. He's certainly going to get back on Bama's campus. We'll see about Auburn. But Billy, to your point about this is a 2024 guy, yeah, he announces in December. Well, he has a whole nother year to get to the next December when he actually would be signing. And if anyone out there is saying, okay, Auburn, for instance, one of the top 3 schools, well, they're going to have coaching changes. Well, if they do, that gives them a whole year to recruit him with a new staff. So I would think this one is far from over, but I would say if LSU is able to nab him, it puts you in a great spot. Now everybody else has got to beat you, has to flip him, has to try to keep him home. But a nice job here early on by Jamar Cain, and not surprised. He's built up a nice 23 class. We'll see if they put more names into that. But moving forward into 24, we've started to see some of these high-profile targets get on campus more and more. And I kind of feel like Dixon's one of those that we see almost out there as much as anybody when it comes to LSU news.
Yeah, and, he really fits, I think, the Brian Kelly mold. I mean, just a really well-spoken young man. Mobile Christian's a good school in the area. And you mentioned Jamar Cain's efforts. This edge class for 2024 is going to be really interesting. They've got Kalaj Cobbins there in state at Destrehan. Colin Simmons at Duncanville, they've been linked to heavily. I think that one's going to be more of a battle. If you came away with Sterling Dixon and Kalaj Cobbins, I think you're in a really good spot there for 2024. Obviously, Colin Simmons brings kind of like a combo, I would say, after watching a little bit of Harold Perkins off the edge, a little bit of a combo between Harold Perkins and Marcel Brooks as far as how he is off the edge. I got to see Colin Simmons in his scrimmage as well as a regular season game already. So really talented, fast edge rusher. I think Kalaj and Sterling are a little bit on the bulked up side of things, but those are kind of the 3 really edge targets that they're really kind of centering on. And if they got Sterling on board, that'd be a really good start. Jamar Cain's one of the best out there for a reason right now. He's pretty hot on the recruiting trail. So don't count him out on getting Sterling Dixon away from a Freddie Roach. But we'll see. It'll be a battle to pull him out of Alabama, no doubt. And I think with that, I think we can kind of continue on this 2024 train. 2 more prospects that were on campus this past weekend, could really be trending LSU's way. We talked about one at length, in the past. Jawan Johnson out of Lafayette Christian was back on campus, a really, really good athlete, nickel prospect that LSU's recruiting, earned his offer this summer, plays quarterback for LCA, and we've talked about him a good bit. He really raved about his latest LSU visit.
I like him for so many reasons. And yes, he did. He was at the Tennessee game. Again, he didn't walk away saying, oh, I'm off of LSU now because they lost. It was, hey, as an in-state kid, a junior in high school, I was at summer camp. It was all about working out. I got my offer, but this was a chance for me to come in as a high priority guy for them to really, like he said, I had one-on-one with Coach Kelly. I did all these different things. So, yes, I think LSU probably already had a lead, but has taken an even bigger lead. And His other early offers, Billy, are Georgia, Bama, A&M. The who's who of teams, SEC teams, SEC West teams that are ultimately going to be after big name prospects in Louisiana and surrounding states. So you mentioned he's a DB, he's a corner, nickel, whatever it might be. Thought he looked great at camp. But as I said, I like him for a number of reasons. Great athlete, but also top 5 player already in the class in the state for next year. Goes to LCA, a school that you recruit well, is one of the best teams in the state, will always have prospects. Like I said, the same thing about, that was why I love the Shelton Sampson and Zaylon's Hurd and Tyree Adams. Like, yeah, they're great players, and that's obvious. You want that. But it doesn't hurt when they're coming from Neville, Catholic, St. Aug, schools that are going to be churning out D1 level players. So I like it. I like the progress they've made there. I don't know if he's got any sort of decision date. Again, he's a junior in high school, so he can take this another year plus. But early on, I do think he's kind of developing into an obvious target for them in state, but a guy who also seems to be pretty infatuated by LSU.
Yeah, I completely agree. And another guy that since the summer has been linked to LSU in a big way, but has kind of taken some other visits. He's picked up some offers. He's let his recruitment play out a little bit more. Another 2024 defensive back. And mind you, LSU has Zion Ferguson and Maurice Williams already committed. One corner, one safety, kind of an in-the-box safety, I think, based on what I've seen from Maurice Williams and his length, his size. But Jalen Crawford, 6 foot, 170-pound defensive back out of the state of Georgia, which has been really good to LSU, plays for Parkview. He's somebody that over the summer, quite honestly, you kind of hear and talk about the words, silent commit. There was a lot of buzz around Jalen Crawford. I don't know if he gave him the silent commit, but they were talking about, everybody seemed to talk about Jalen Crawford and the buzz around him in LSU. Lo and behold, gets back on campus for that Tennessee game. And once again, the buzz is picking up.
Yep, he's a guy out of Georgia who's already buddies with, like, Michael Doherty is one of their commits out of Georgia. You mentioned Zion Ferguson. Joseph Stone is another kid out of Georgia. And JoJo was there this past weekend hanging out with Michael Doherty, another Grayson High kid that's committed to LSU, and then Crawford. So they got to spend a good amount of time together. Again, we're finding out post-game, like, throw the score out in terms of recruiting. What was any benefit of an 11 o'clock game? Well, the staff was done by about 4 or 5 with the game, and they just went into an all afternoon, evening recruiting kind of assault there. And those guys all hung out together, did their photo shoots together. Another guy, Xavier Adkins, you've seen him, Billy, as part of LSU's 2025 or 4 class here in Louisiana, linebacker. He was on campus and hanging out with those guys. So I think it's 3rd or 4th visit he and his dad have made to LSU since March. So again, for watching what they do, he sure is visiting LSU a lot. He's got the offer. He's a top 20 corner. And you said, yeah, they already have some early names there. And obviously they're going to add more. And we're talking about a couple of guys who seem to be trending LSU's way. I'd point out that I think they have to treat next year a lot like they're treating this year. And they have a ton of DBs committed right now, but they're also still recruiting and even offering more. You look at Billy, I posted on the board, I had it written down, I don't know where it is, but the super seniors on roster, guys who've already taken advantage of red shirts and COVID year and all that, half of them are the cornerbacks. It's like, all of the transfer guys you just brought in. The only returning guys you had at corner from the team, Raydarius Jones and Demarius McGee, are out all season. They aren't even playing, so there's no guarantee they're going to be on the team. The only guys you signed were LaTerrence Welsh, Jordan Allen, and Jalen Davis Robinson. None of them have played at all. Like, this is a multi-year rebuild in the defensive back room, maybe even more specifically corner. But I think it's going to take I think if I'm an LSU fan, I'm hesitant to jump in and think whatever they do this class will fix all the issues in the defensive backfield, and they'll have depth starting next year. I don't think that's the case. I think they're having to lean on transfers again next year. By that time, you've developed that crop you just signed, LaTerrence Welsh and Jordan Allen and Davis Robinson, and then you're a year into bringing all these guys along that you could potentially sign. So I think it's 2 years back-to-back, 23 and 24, stack up on as many high school defensive backs as you can.
Yeah, you mentioned those super seniors, Seven Banks, Jarek Bernard Converse, Colby Richardson, Todd Harris, Joe Fuchsia are the ones that this season is.
And I guess 7 could take a medical red shirt if he doesn't come back. But you get the point. As you listed it off, that's almost everybody. So
yeah,
time to keep rebuilding. You got to just keep reloading that room.
And corner is now a position that, and just kind of watching personnel departments around the country, it just seems like corners just are getting nicked up. They're playing a lot of snaps. Offenses are going really fast. You need that depth. You can't just roll out there Christian Fulton and Derek Stingley and play them all 95 snaps a game. That's just not something that people can do anymore. And guys are getting, quite honestly, hurt because of it. So you need that depth. You need to build that up. It's kind of like an offensive line room. You just have to spend scholarships on it. So I like what LSU's doing in their aggressive approach, doing that there. Let's finish up the 2024 class. I'm going to flip the 2 board questions that we're going to talk about. DW Tiger brings up Julian Sayin, 2024 4-star quarterback who's been to LSU, going to visit Alabama on October 22nd. When we talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe even last week, it was LSU, potentially Georgia, and potentially Alabama in the mix here. We've seen Georgia pick up some crystal balls for one of their quarterback targets, on 3 recruiting prediction machine picks for one of their quarterback targets. They're high on some other ones as well. Alabama's got a few guys they like, but now Sayin is going to go ahead and visit Tuscaloosa, and it seems like his decision is starting to not be pushed back, but it's taking a little bit longer than maybe I think even he would have anticipated going into that LSU visit.
Yeah, I think it's only being pushed back in the sense that he wanted to visit Bama, and now that visit doesn't come until the end of the month, right? October 22nd. So he'll be at Bama for that game. This isn't a surprise. Like we talked about this on the podcast, like you said, when people said, why didn't you put an RPM prediction in for Sayin to LSU? It looks like they lead. I do believe they lead. But at the time, it was, let's see what Georgia's doing. And it seems that Georgia's after a couple of other quarterbacks who are not working on that same decision time frame that he is, which is in the next month, let's say. Then it was, let's see if he then sets up a visit to Bama, because he had visited there multiple times. But Bama's still recruiting a lot of quarterbacks. So they could be in a position that's similar to Georgia where, hey, we're not like a lot of the guys we like are not ready to decide yet. Maybe we're still doing evaluations. So like, of course you have him on campus. Of course you're recruiting him. Are you ready to take his commitment and your chase for all the quarterbacks in the class? It's just in terms that depends on how comfortable they feel with it. I know for LSU, they feel great about it. They are pushing for Sayin. They want him to be the quarterback commitment right now. And it's evident. I mean, these are words out of Sayin's mouth. He said, look, LSU is pushing for me very hard. They've made it clear. I'm on the phone with Brian Kelly talking about things post-visit. So there's a real sense of LSU's made him a priority, and people who are freaking out of, well, Saban's just going to take him to keep him away from LSU. No, he's not. Well, if Bama wants him, they'll just get him. I don't think that's the truth either. I think that Bama would have to, like Sayin has paid, and his family and people around him have paid a lot of attention. Like when they get on these visits, there are a lot of questions asked about not just how he fits in, but the depth chart or where they're going with things, what the offensive philosophy is, and what different, how practices are structured, all these different things. Like he's not just rolling around looking to pick which school's hot on. Like Bama's hot right now. That's where I want to go. I've got an offer. Like it's not that. Bama will have to recruit him, almost have to roll out a red carpet type approach like they do with any other quarterback they're trying to get committed to be able to pull ahead of where LSU's at right now. So I don't have a prediction in. But if he were picking today, I think it'd be LSU. I don't have a prediction because he's not, and he's going to wait till right after his Bama, soon after his Bama trip, to make that announcement. Is that late October? Is it early November? Yes, one of the two. I don't think it really matters which one. I think the dust will settle from those visits, and he'll kind of see where he feels like he's the best fit for. And I think right now, Billy, that he views that as being LSU, and him wanting to continue to go see other schools in Alabama doesn't detract from the reality that he's very much into LSU right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said, with the caveat that LSU's got to win this recruitment. They put in the resources, they put in the time, they made it very clear he's their guy. If for some reason this stretches out, or even if he just goes to Alabama, I mean, that if he goes to Alabama, that's how the cookie crumbles, like that's recruiting. But this is one of those where you've had the momentum, you've had the lead, gotta land him. Gotta be, if he's your dude, and Ricky, we kind of went through this in the spring. Dante Moore hits campus, a lot of buzz around that. Kind of drags on. Obviously, that one got to be messy. Same with Jaden Rashada, guys like that. I think this is, a recruitment where you've had him on campus. He's been able to see your program in many different ways. Got to land him. Got to get him done. Because, look, there's a ton of time, but where do you kind of go from here? DJ Lagway is going to be a tough pull. There are certainly other guys that'll emerge, but I just feel like, momentum-wise, it would be a huge deal for LSU to get this win, especially if Bama did end up, really rolling out the red carpet and making it known that they would like to get Shea on board.
Yeah, here's what I'll say before we move on to the final question. I know we don't want to drag on here forever. Was Shea, who's rated as high as the number 2 quarterback in the country, kind of a consensus top 5 guy, obviously a big-time player. What I like what Joe Sloan's done here is you mentioned Dante Moore and Jaden Rashada. Like, they got a bunch of big names on campus, but it was happening in the spring and into the summer, which at that point, a lot of teams are hungry for a quarterback, and they're chasing the uncommitted guys. When you're at this point, which is 7 or 8 months before that, 6 months before that, people are still in the middle of trying to put together their 23 class, and they're kind of now looking ahead to 24. Like, Sloan has been, and you talk to all these kids, you can get a sense of it week to week, working them week to week, watching film, moving his board up and down. And ultimately it's come to a spot where it's like, man, the guys that are getting around the most are Julian Sayin and DJ Lagway, both excellent players. Lagway is awesome. You feel like your shot with Lagway might not be as good as your shot with Sayin. And if Sayin's ready to do something now, that's even better. So I like the notion of pushing for it now, because like you said, let's say it doesn't work out. You got time. You can, Dylan Raiola and CJ Carr are really kind of 2 of the only national quarterbacks, top 10 quarterbacks committed anywhere. I may be skipping over someone, but you got time to then pivot and keep going. But I like taking your shot right here with one of the top 5 guys, really 2 of them, Lagway and Sayin, and say, hey, look, if y'all want in, get in. And then see where things go. I don't think they're far off from some good news on Sayin, unless Alabama really buckles in. Then I think it'll be a tight race.
Yep, completely agreed. Another situation in the class of 2023, a lot of people, this is probably the most talked about position, honestly, in the class of 2023. I think maybe tight end, but there's just, until this week, not too much to really report on that front. How do you replace Jaquelin Roy, right? That is a big question, and it comes from Iowa City Tiger fan. It seems like they trail for every nose tackle left, is what he said in his question. I made the point on the board. I don't see Jaquelin Roy as a nose. I don't see him as a Jaheim Otis.
Well, he's a 3-tech probably.
He's a three tech. He's a defensive tackle. And there just aren't many guys like a Jaheim Otis or however, whatever body type. I think Grady Jarrett is probably the name I'm thinking of, committed to Georgia in this class. There just aren't many 6'4", 6'3", 350-pounders laying around who can actually play. And I think that's worth noting. I think, and Jamar Cain said this in the spring, honestly, when all the assistants were introduced, he said, I'd rather take a guy and build him up. Somebody who's athletic as all get out. Savion Jones is a great example. Quincy Wiggins is a great example. For the most part, that's kind of what he has to work with on the defensive line at LSU. And it's a lot of what he recruited this cycle. You look at Deron Reed out of Georgia, I think he's, Jaquelin Roy, but you bulk him up instead of, kind of trim him down like Jaquelin did late in his career.
Well, and again, too, they sort of have this, when Mason Smith was out there, it was Mason on the, one side, Jaquelin in the middle, and then Ali Gay on the other side, and then they stand up B.J. Ojulari. That's kind of what the looks were all early on. You lose Mason Smith and you suddenly feel like you just don't have as much, right? And I get it. He was the best player on the team. So I think a part of that is that, right, for one, Mason Smith will be on the team next year. So that helps you out of the gates. 2, I guess we're presuming Jaquelin goes pro for the sake of this conversation. Right now, Jacobian Guillory gets the reps behind Jaquelin Roy. Jacobian Guillory is about as, that's a nose you want. He's a national powerlifting champion. He's got he's the heaviest D lineman out there, but he's still got a little bit of athleticism to him. Certainly packs a punch. You hope he, as a senior, is really playing at a different level. So that buys you if Jacoby and Guillory is playing well, that buys you time. I don't know about behind him. Bryce Langston, we've never seen him play. So jury out there. Tyji Hill is still so young. It's either they're going to have to be creative and kind of move guys around a good bit. But Billy, I think another thing to close out here is, who's your starter right now with Mason Smith out? Mekhi Wingo. Where'd you get him? The portal. He was all SEC freshman at Missouri. He wanted to go to a higher level. LSU went after him hard. They got him. He steps in. He's probably your best D lineman this year if we're not counting Ojulari as part of that group. So I think they'll be fine. You've got Guillory. You can move guys around. We'll see if Roy goes pro. And then even if Roy does go pro, that will be within a window of time for them to say, hey, we can address this in the portal. We can go add if you need a true nose tackle outside of Guillory, then go get one.
Well said. I think that's really all we need to say about it. I will say that one other thing, I mean, they got guys like Jordan Hall. They're trying to flip Amari Washington, some national names out there to kind of round out this defensive line. Hall, just like they're trying to add, some more talent on the edge, like, Akana and Nicholas Harbor and guys like that. So Jamar Cain's going to turn over every stone. And I mean, honestly, in the however many months now it's been since he's been on the job, he's earned a lot of people's trust. So we'll see what he digs up. Either to close out the class or in the transfer portal. So with that, guys, we appreciate you guys listening to this edition of the Bengal Tiger Recruiting Podcast. Please hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. Also, follow us wherever you catch your podcast at. But most importantly, take advantage of the $1 for a year deal to subscribe to the BengalTiger.com. You get access to all of On3, get access to the message boards. The boards have been popping, and look, I love all the new numbers we've got.
You get a free hat. I mean, come on.
Free hat. Everybody's been well behaved on the boards. So, look, it's been a good time. We're going to keep it rolling. Appreciate all you guys listening out there. Shea D, have a good one, man. We'll catch you next week on another.
All right, we'll see you.
And thanks to all you guys out there who are listening. So have a good one and enjoy the rest of the day.